I'm going to talk a little bit about SIRIL. Just give a quick overview of how a basic workflow would go and kind of what it might be useful for, what it might be useful for and why you might want to use it. Okay, so SIRIL has a couple, I know a lot of people here, the kind of the preferred software is PixInsight, but SIRIL does have a couple of advantages over PixInsight. The first one is that it is open source free software with active development, so it does have an active developer base. Developers are in the forums, on Facebook, etc. They answer questions, so you can they definitely respond to you if you have questions, and we'll help you with that. It's all three major platforms: Windows, Mac, Linux. PixInsight is too, but it's just a little bit, I guess, about SIRIL. So I think but yeah, it's free, and that's really where it comes down to the major benefit. And it's maybe a little less of a beast to jump onto as opposed to PixInsight. It's a little bit, I at least found it a lot easier to work with than PixInsight. I had done the free trial on PixInsight, and I got somewhere with it, but I was struggling with it, and I found SIRIL a lot easier. So you can do manual or scripted workflow, and I'm going to go through that in more detail later on. But just I guess a couple of examples. I mean, what I mean by that, you can go through the stacking, and you can go basically sub by sub and pick out your best sub, and you can pick the stars in that sub that you want to use for registration. You can configure a whole bunch of different parameters on the registration. I found that to be very helpful when I was first starting out with astrophotography, because, well, I still am kind of a newbie here, but a lot of my subs were of, let's say, medium to poor quality. And there were definitely some tricks that I was able to find in the forums and the YouTube videos to open up the tolerances and salvage a lot of that work. And maybe it wasn't great that I want to show it off, but I at least was able to stack it and kind of see where I went wrong and see what the problems were, and understand what I needed to do to make better subs the next time. So the granular manual process and stacking I found very helpful. And then also it's also scripted, right? People are making all kinds of scripts. There's sort of a scripting language that goes along with it, and you can automate everything. You can basically automate almost the entire post-processing if you want. And one example of that is there's a script for the ZWO C-Star 50. So there is supposedly you just kind of have, I don't have the ZW, I don't have the C-Star, but supposedly you just kind of have to download the subs and like kind of click go on that script, and it'll kick out a post-processed and stacked, or a fully post-processed image. Yeah, so I kind of said that already. You can do either really basic stuff and some really some just like click go, and some very detailed work as well. So as far as installing it goes, it's a very basic install. You just go down there, download the executable, kind of double click it. They also have to install along with it well, you don't have to, but a lot of the scripts depend on it. The StarNet command line tool for StarNet processing. That's a little more complicated to install. You have to kind of get it in the right directory, or at least go and let's see. I think I kind of screenshotted it. No, I didn't. You do have to go into your configurations and point. You have to point SIRIL at where your StarNet is, but that's not too difficult. So yeah. So this is I'm gonna go through the basic workflow that I use. I'm using a Canon DSLR as my camera, and there's some peculiarities with that I'm gonna go through. But the basic workflow is stacking, and then in stacking, conversion from the Canon kicks out the Canon RAW or CR2 files, registration, calibration, and then this is sort of background extraction. You can do background extraction in the stacking process, and I will go through that a little bit later on. So you either do it there, or you do it as a second step later on. and then stacking. So if you didn't do background extraction during the stacking, then you would do it after. You can use Gray Expert, which Max went through before. SIRIL has a tool internally, which basically pretty much 100% mocks the functionality of Gray Expert, at least from a user interface perspective. So if you use Gray Expert, you can use that. I'm not sure which is better. I've tried them both. They're kind of, I actually prefer the background extraction method. Removing green noise, that is a DSLR specific thing, but that's, you would do that. Banding reduction, I believe that is specific to the Canon DSLRs. You can get, it's usually horizontal bands. I believe you can get vertical ones too. The photometric color calibration, if you're familiar with, I think they call it this, I think it's the same name in Pixelsight, right? Yeah, it's basically the same thing there. Star processing, stretching, recombination, and then, you know, just kind of adjusting your levels to finish off. So moving on to stacking. So this is the kind of the basic way to, this is the easiest way to stack with the script. It is required that you have 4 directories. So you first have to set the home directory. Let's see, let me see if I can get the laser pointer up. All right. You set, you gotta, so this is a screenshot of the user interface. You click on this thing and you set the home, you pick the directory as your home directory. You have to set the home directory. And then inside that home directory, you need to have 4 folders with exactly those names with the exact capitalization, biases, darks, lights, and flats. And then really all you do is go up to the script menu, click the processing. I'm using one-shot color processing. I believe they have RGB, they have mono processing as well. You would do that if you're using mono. You click it and it's pretty quick. I have a reasonably fast computer. When I didn't have guiding going, I was throwing like, I want to say almost 1,500 subs at it. It knocked that out in about 20 minutes. It stacked it. So it's pretty quick. So like I said, there's scripts, and I'm just going to go through this a little bit. So this is what the script looks like. It's just got basic commands. If you're familiar kind of with the command line interface, like this stuff should be really intuitive. If you've never touched a command line interface, it's probably scary. You probably don't want to touch it. There is another, there is a tool which I've looked at. I haven't actually installed. It's called SIRIL or SIRIL. I don't know exactly how you say it, but that's got a graphical user interface. And you can go through there and kind of click on the options and it'll build the script for you a lot. So you can, even if you're not comfortable editing scripts, that's fine. You can still kind of get the same benefit. You would just have to go that way. But, you know, it just, all right. So I mean, this is the basic script. It's convert the files. First it goes through, converts everything to fit files, and it's calibrating, stacking, you know, it's doing that for everything. And then, so this is what I was talking about, the frame by frame background extraction. You do have to go into the script. There is no way to do this in the menus. You do have to go into script if you want to do it, but you basically just have to throw that command in there, sequence sub sky, and then PP light to, well, the PP light is pointing at your lights to say that that's the ones you want to do the background extraction. And that will go through and do the background on an individual sub basis. There's some real advantages to that. Your gradients can get very complex because they're going to change throughout the night. And that's why you end up having to use like 4th order polynomials or something to try and pull them out. Whereas, like, you know, your neighbor turns the lights on, turns the lights off, the moon's moving around. If you're doing it sub by sub, you can pretty much use a linear gradient removal usually, and that'll probably do better than even Gray Expert. And I've found it to be pretty helpful. If you do this, you actually shouldn't really have to do background extraction later on.
That's pretty wild. I never thought to do that. I mean, it seems so obvious now when you realize that's an option, but that's pretty cool. Surprised Pixelsight hasn't picked up on any of that.
Yeah. Oh, let me get out of it. All right, and I'm not gonna go through this, but I'm not gonna go through this in detail, but this is kind of the manual way you can do it. I would recommend if you're gonna use SIRIL that you kind of walk through this and look at one of the YouTube videos to help you walk through it. If you do it at least once, you can go through and kind of see all the different options that you have there to do it. It's got, let's see, let me get the laser pointer up again. So it's got this little window up here, and like when you're going to the registration tab, it'll show you, it'll kind of highlight, and you can pick with the mouse which stars you want to use for registration. You got all your different things. This is kind of where you would go if you, so I'm very confused. I never remember this off the top of my head. I believe it's biases that you don't actually really have to use. You can go with synthetic biases instead if you kind of figure out where the values for your cameras are. Yeah. So you would be able to, if you were going through manually, you would be able to turn the biases off and then just set a value for the biases here. But you would basically just step through these things one at a time. SIRIL uses sequences, so you have to go first to this sequence tab and kind of just point it to where your darks are, where your lights are, etc., and show it which files you're using, and then you just kind of click through one tab at a time. Finish it out. There are some people that really like doing it this way. One benefit of doing this way is that if you're limited for hard drive space, you know, each step, I'm sure this is what Pixelsight is doing too, even though you can't really see it behind the scenes, but each time you take a step, it's making new files. So you take one step, you actually don't need the whole file, so you can delete them and then you can move to the next step. You get new files, you delete the old files. So you can definitely cut down on that, like hundreds of megabytes or gigabyte, well, it's gigabytes of it's hundreds of gigabytes actually of like intermediate data that stacks up. You can kind of control that a little bit.
Yeah, Pixelsight definitely does that. You'll have all subfolders with each step of the way for the calibration and registration. And only really in the last year did they put a little warning up that said, by the way, this is gonna eat up, 50 gigs of hard drive space. I mean, you can go in after the fact and delete them, but if you're redlining your hard drive, I mean.
Yeah, it's
so that's pretty cool.
I have one question. Can it handle, or how does it handle dark flats?
could you repeat that? I heard how does it handle flats?
Oh, no, dark flats or flat darks, whatever you want to call it. Same as flat frames with a lens cap on.
Yeah, you make them the same way.
Right. No, but I mean, because you said you needed to have specific directory names, but
yeah, you have, so it in whatever top level folder you're putting your data in, you call that your home, you set that as your home folder.
right, yeah.
You have to have, it requires those 4 folders.
But I guess that's my question. Where would the flat darks go?
Typically, bias and dark flats are interchangeable. Either use one.
Okay, all right.
I would guess you put them in the bias.
Okay.
Biases are the short ones.
Biases are the short ones. Flat darks are darks that are the same length as your flats.
Right.
It's
That's
kind
an
of
oxymoron there, isn't it?
yeah. I mean,
Yeah, I know.
flat darks in general though are kind of antiquated with modern sensors. The sensors are able to handle shorter and shorter flats, and so therefore you don't need, you're not exposing for long enough to induce any noise that a dark would remove. So, I don't see many people using flat darks in their workflow.
Yeah, would,
No.
Oh, okay, so maybe I don't need to do that anymore, huh? Learn something new.
no, a flat is really to remove optical aberrations, dust bunnies, light
Right,
vignetting, all those things. If you cover your scope,
Yeah.
you're not gonna have any light at all going in there.
Right,
So it's like a bias frame,
I mean,
basically.
what a flat dark, yeah, what a flat dark originally was for was if you were shooting a flat that's a
2 minutes.
2 minute long flat, something like that, that's exposing long enough that you might get the issues that darks are removing, amp glow, stuff like
Yeah,
that.
okay.
But because the sensors are so sensitive, or for lack of a better word, now, I mean, the ZWO cameras, you're shooting flats that are in some instances sub-second. So they're not exposed nearly long enough to have any. So yeah, I mean, you could probably get away with not shooting flat darks at this point.
oh, okay, all right,
There you go.
thank you.
So, yeah, so that is the correct answer, and there is I can dig it up for you and kind of send it out after the meeting. There is a whole page in the manual in SIRIL where they even admit that that's the case. You don't really need to do that. But the scripts will crash if you don't have all four things there. So if you're using SIRIL, you have to do it. And the darks are the flat darks, and the biases are shorter exposed.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I still use bias frames. I just don't use dark flats.
Another simple questions. So for each of those folders, does it have equal number? Or just have one dot and then
You don't need an equal number in there. You shoot as many as you normally do. I've been shooting like 20 flats, 20 flat darks. I shoot like 200 biases, and maybe 100 is what I did. I don't know. I don't sit around and watch it go. So
but can I just
Yeah.
do one?
No,
So once you stack it and get a master, then you could keep using that.
yeah.
But the flats you have to change every time you move anything in your optical train, right?
Yeah. To make the master though,
Yeah.
typically you want like 20 dark or 25 dark, 2025. 2025 typically is what I've always used for flat dark and bias. And then as Mike said, these scripts will make a master one, which you can then, reuse. You should reshoot flats if you change anything in the optical, but the dark is good pretty much forever. Unless you're shooting at like a drastically different temperature. So. Anyway.
Yeah. All right. So yeah, that's kind of stacking. And like I said, that includes the background extraction, so I'm not going to go through that again. I'm just going to kind of run through very quickly what I did for the rest of the workflow, and you just kind of see the before and after. Where did I go? Here we go. So this is banding reduction. Like I said, I'm pretty sure that's specific actually to Canon DSLRs. So if you're shooting with a Nikon, I don't think you see this, but you should be able to see it. The banding is pretty obvious in this one. And I just clicked banding reduction tool. I didn't change any of the defaults, and it pretty much killed that. This is in the, this is a auto stretch view, by the way. So yeah, and this is the SIRIL interface. So like this button down here is, sorry, forget which one now. One of these, I'm bad at memorizing, but one of these buttons down here, you just kind of click, oh, there it is. You click that little menu and it'll give you, you can switch between linear, auto stretch, and the different views. Okay, so remove green noise, that's, again, I believe that's all DSLRs that get bothered by that one. You can kind of see, you can definitely see a difference in color. This is the original, this is it. Again, I just kind of clicked that tool, it runs in like 5 seconds and left all the defaults intact. Photometric color calibration. This should work very similar to the tool in PixInsight if you're familiar with that. You do have to plate solve the image. The plate solving is kind of built into the menu. This is a screenshot of the menu that pops up. There's a couple of databases that get downloaded. You do have to know your roughly speaking your pixel size and your focal length. You don't have to be exact. It'll kind of correct that on you if you as long as you get it close and it can do a solve. But you do the plate solving, click that, and then it'll do yeah, really the only thing there is the plate solving. It's a little tricky sometimes. So yeah, so star processing. And like I said, there's a couple different options. None of them, I'm not super thrilled with all of them. They all kind of have their quirks. And some of them you do preset stretch, some of them you do post stretch. Pre-stretch is deconvolution. Let's see. Yeah, so the default parameter should mostly work for that. I don't entirely know. Deconvolution can make your image go wonky sometimes. I don't know necessarily how to describe it. I've had very varying luck with that. Yeah, so and for sure it misses some of the biggest and poorest shaped stars, and that just makes the image look awful. And that's really more on my subs than anything else. But if you've got like this big honking football of a star in the center of your picture, you run StarNet and it kind of shrinks all the other stars, and that football is still there. It makes the image much worse than it was, right? StarNet star removal, again, that requires the command line interface. I've had the same problems with that I had with deconvolution. Then there is this thing that has to be done post stretch. This guy, Rich Stevenson, he goes by Deep Space Astro on YouTube. He wrote a custom script that is kind of automates the StarNet removal process, and it's kind of one click. That it definitely works as good as trying to do StarNet manually for me. So that's kind of the way I've been going with it. It generates the mask, shrinks the stars, recombines the whole thing. Again, it's the same problems. You can run it multiple times. So he's got the default set to shrink the stars 25%. If you want to go 40%, you can definitely just hit the script twice. It'll do that fine. So for stretching, you set the image back to manual. The image the method that seems to work for me is I struggled with this a lot, but it's when you're stretching, and I don't know necessarily the term, when you're doing the positive stretch, I guess, you use the hyperbolic stretch. And then when you're knocking the noise back down, you go to the linear mode and knock it back. And for some reason, I really don't know at all. I don't understand very much at all what's going on behind the scenes, but I saw that tip and it seemed to work a lot better than what I was trying to do everything in linear or trying to do everything in hyperbolic. And then after that, you just you adjust the saturation and the contrast. There are saturation and contrast tools in SIRIL. I don't particularly care for them. I usually export the image and finish it off in GIMP. Or I'm sure you can use Photoshop too. I believe that is my last slide, except for, yeah, my references. Yeah, okay, so there's star reduction. I did show that, right? Because that has to be done post-script. So, yeah, I mean, star reduction, I think, is definitely a personal to taste thing. It's some images I don't really want to do it, some images I don't, but that is, the top is the original, the bottom is knocked down 25%. It's certainly this was an image it worked pretty well on. Yeah, and then there's there's the resources, there's this, the SIRIL main page, the SIRIL documentation, the StarNet where you need to get, and then, Deep Space Astro, he's definitely like the guy to go to if you want to learn SIRIL. He's got hours-long YouTube videos where he's going through every step of the way. So that is my presentation.